Hi, it's Devon Naika from Retirement Wellness SA. And today I've got something particularly special to share with you. It's a secret tip for government employees, GEPF members. Now, one of your key focus areas in order for you to be successful is to ensure that you are able to put yourself in a position where you're getting financial confidence. And you've heard me speak about this. That is the place where you're able to enjoy money. So know that you have enough money to enjoy your life without the fear that you're going to run out of money. So that's one of your key areas. And the way for us to get there, there's multiple avenues, but we want to pay attention to things like tax. We want to pay attention to how we invest, where we invest. We also want to start to pay attention to the secret I'm going to share with you right now, which is your spouse. Now, if being married before didn't offer you much benefit, I'm sure you're going to find this incredibly valuable. Let's hop over to the iPad. I'm going to show this secret to you. When we are working with your retirement planning or your resignation planning, one of the key focus areas here, again, if you is your spouse. What I want you to do is ensure that your spouse is present for all of the sessions that you are having. It's something that I make particularly important when I'm consulting. So if you're engaging with me, I'd want to make sure that your spouse or partner is present, because at some point in time that you are not around, your spouse needs to be in a position where he or she can understand what you are trying to do and how to, to overcome that, how to deal with that. So again, that becomes critically important. The next thing is, I also want to get an idea as to what's happening with your spouse from a financial perspective, you see? And this is where the secret comes in. So let's assume that, this is you, and you have now chosen to retire or resign, and this is your spouse. And your spouse is also either already retired or resigned, depending if they're a GEPF member, or even if they are already working. Now, we'll assume in our example that you are at that place where you're still making your decision on which route to go, whether you should retire or resign. So why does the spouse play such a significant role here? Few aspects we want to work with. We'd start off having a look at medical aid, obviously. If your spouse is on their own medical aid, that will influence your decision here whether you should retire or resign. Because as you know, if you had to retire, the medical aid is still subsidized by government. If it's not, and you are going to resign, then you know that the medical aid has to be fully funded. Now, if your spouse is already on a medical aid, that might be beneficial for you, and in which case, you again might go either route to retire or resign. That's one of the aspects that you want to focus on. Then something particularly important, which perhaps you might not have factored, and that is tax. What I would want to do here is pay very careful attention to the income that's coming through from your spouse. Now, please pay particular focus to this next step that I'm going to do for you. We know that your spouse is earning an income, and that income is already set, it's already determined. We also know that your spouse is paying some tax on that income. See, so that's already determined. What I'd want to pay close attention to is, from that income after the tax is paid and any other expenses, what sort of disposable income is available? So I want to know, what is surplus? How much is the surplus income? Now, why that is critical is when we know the surplus income that's here, we can then start doing your planning around the surplus. I'll show you what I mean. Assume your spouse is not in a position to adjust the income. See, not in a position to adjust the income, then your spouse is forced to pay the tax. Let me use an example with something that would make a lot more sense to you. Let's just assume that your spouse is also a government employee, and your spouse opted to retire, in my example. So in my example, your spouse opted to retire, which means your spouse is earning an income. As you know, that income cannot be adjusted. It's predetermined now by GEPF, which means the tax has to be paid on it. But let's assume there's a surplus. And again, in my example, let's assume the surplus is 2,000 Rand. Now, that just means for you, when you're making that decision to retire or resign, we could opt for resign here and reduce your income. This is if you found resignation being more valuable for you. So observe what's happening. If on retirement, your income was 20,000, now you'd pay tax on that. And if we are doing resignation, what I'm saying is, because we know that there's a surplus here, see, because I know there's a surplus of 2,000, depending on the option that you have with resignation, you could adjust your income every single year. So assuming you went with that option where you adjust your income every year, then we can reduce this income to, let's just say 17,000. Now you might be wondering why I'm saying 17,000 here if the surplus is only 2,000. The reason I'm reducing it by that much, again, it's just an example, is I can factor your tax savings. So if you look at the difference here, on 20,000, you're going to pay tax, whatever the tax rate is. Now, if we are in a position to use the surplus, then we can reduce this. Your income, we can reduce it to 17,000 because of the fact that we are saving some tax, which means on your pool of capital, I'm going to illustrate it on this page here, just to give you better guidance around it. Let's again say this is your capital. We know your money is invested in some place, and that place gives you a return. And we also know that you are drawing an income here. So in my example, what I want you to see is, if you are drawing an income of 20,000, that's obviously feeding off this investment. But what if we had worked with your spouse and we took an income of 17,000? Now suddenly what happens is we are allowing this capital an opportunity to start to grow, most likely, because we are taking a lower income. You see? So we're not changing anything in terms of where it's getting invested or the nature of the investment itself, but all we are doing is adjusting your income. And by adjusting your income, you're able to pay less tax. It's not affecting you from a financial perspective because this surplus from your spouse was a surplus. It's going to help you because we are now reducing the tax. And remember, in this kind of investment, I mean, there's a structure that you can choose if you resign, where you can choose your income on a yearly basis. So you can change your income yearly. So imagine we ran this for a 12-month period because that was your circumstances for those 12 months. Then at the end of 12 months, we can always go and adjust it based on what happens with your spouse, you see, on that surplus. So if you need a higher income the following year, we can increase it. But by doing that, we took your capital from this and we made it a bit bigger, possibly, right? I mean, depending on the other factors, but naturally from the example, as you can see, it would lend toward that we're able to grow your capital and make that capital to perform even better, you see, inside the same investment return. Yeah. So you will learn something critical now. You know that when you are at that stage where you are ready to retire or resign, whichever route you determine is best for you, it's essential that your spouse be present for that, because there's a number of elements that your spouse could bring to the table. For example, medical aid, tax, a surplus, other expenses that would be incredibly important for you and can adjust how you are planning. In the event of you opting for resignation, remember, depending on the option that you choose, you could change your income yearly. And that gives you a great deal of flexibility, meaning in the beginning, if you needed a low income, we can take a lower income. By taking a lower income, it allows us that opportunity to grow capital, and it also allows us to save on tax. One more critical thing. So if there's a part of you that says, why must you deplete your spouse's surplus income? I'm not suggesting that we deplete it or use all of it, because remember, there's many other elements to focus on. I just want you to think from a wealth perspective. So using my example, if we are in a position where we can have that capital and we start to grow the capital and assume you are not around, now your spouse is in a position where they are able to get a larger capital paid out to them, see? Which can obviously then filter onto your kids depending again on how I do your planning. Yeah. I hope you found this video helpful. I use this technique all the time when I'm working with government employees, and I've had phenomenal success with it. Help members save a fortune in tax and also help them to grow or sustain their capital. Now, if you found this helpful, I'd love to hear your comments. Comment below and let me know. If you've already retired or resigned, I'd like to also know whether this is something you had done when you were doing your planning. Remember to click the thumbs up sign if you like this video, and also to subscribe to us on the YouTube channel. And if there's something of particular importance for you that you'd like me to cover, please post a question for me or send an email to me, and I'm happy to address that for you. Thank you.